Review the things you're going to need to know for the Chapter 8-9 test. Okay, we'll start out with the simple stuff. On Chapter 8, you're doing square roots. We need, light please, thank you. Okay, Chapter 8, the first thing that you learned was the square roots. When it says find all the square roots, okay, if it says find all the square roots, that means you need the positive and negative. So what would the square root of 4 be? All of the square roots of 4.
2 and negative 4, 2 and negative 2.
2 and negative 2, right? So make sure that you put the positive and negative if it says that you need all of the square roots. Okay, if it just says to simplify, and it gives you like a square root of 36, you just need to give the positive one.
6.
So that's just 6. Okay, what if you have a negative in front of the square root?
So, negative 1.
Negative 12, right? Okay, what if it said negative in front and there's a negative under here? No, you can't do that, right?
Will you write no solution?
Yeah, there
Why?
wouldn't be a
There was a
solution to
negative.
this.
Oh.
You can't do negative under the square root. Not yet. Someday you'll say it's imaginary because it's not a real number. Okay, a radicand. Do you remember what that is?
The number underneath is,
Right, under the square root. So the square root of 36, your radicand would be
36.
36. If it was the square root of x plus 7,
X plus 7.
radicand would be the x plus 7. So it's the part that's under the square root sign. What if you had 36 square root of x plus 7 squared? What is your radicand?
All that underneath the square sign?
Yeah, you don't even pay attention to the front part. The radicand is all this stuff that's under there. That's the radicand. It's not equal to that, but that's your radicand right there. So radicand is what's under the radical. The square root sign is a radical. Okay. Decide whether or not the radical expression represents a real number. Does it represent a real number? The negative square root of 169. Does that represent a real number?
Yes.
That's negative 13, right? So that would be a yes. Negative 107.
No.
Because of this, it's a no. Okay. Let's do, it says, on this, it says to assume the expression under the radical, the expression under your square root sign, represents a non-negative real number. So that means give the positive, okay? So if this is a non-negative real number under here, and you have 36x squared, and this is squared, what will this be equal to?
36x squared.
Right. If this says squared here and squared here, the square root and square will get rid of themselves. They'll cancel. So it's just this part right here, 36x squared. Okay, let's do one more of those. If we had 8x to the 4th squared under your square root, what will it simplify?
X.
8x to the 4th, right? You're just going to cancel the squared and the square root.
8x, what does this mean?
8x to the 4th and then squared. Maybe I should get a darker pen. We'll do that when we turn this one off. The next video will be a lot darker. Okay, how about if we simplify this? If we simplify square root of 150. That's going to be a decimal number, but we just want to simplify it without a decimal. Okay, we know 150 is 15 times 10, but neither one of those are perfect squares, are they? So we don't want to divide it up into 15 times 10.
100 times 1.5.
25 and 6? That's a perfect one. Yeah, 100 goes in, no it doesn't. 100 won't divide into it. 25
1.5,
times,
you wanted a decimal, right?
we don't want a
Oh,
decimal.
you don't want a decimal, okay.
Okay, 25 times 6, or we could just put separate square roots over both of these. The square root of 25 is a perfect square, so that's a good one. So we do 150 into 25 times 6. The square root of 25 is 5. So that's simplified right there. Okay, how about negative square root of 48? We're going to keep the negative out here. What are we going to do for the 48? What's a perfect square that will divide into 48?
12 and 4.
4 times 12.
16 times 3.
Oh,
Right.
16.
The 12 has a 4 that will come out again. So
Sorry, Raymond.
that would have worked, but you would have had to do it again. So let's do the 16 and the 3 so we don't have to do it twice. So we'll leave the negative out here. Square root of 16 simplifies to 4. And then we have the square root of 3 left there. Okay. How about if we have a variable under here, x to the 6th power.
X.
Right, you take half of this. You could say this is x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd, which would be x to the 3rd. The square root times itself is just whatever the radicand is, right? This number down here. So we don't have to do it this way. We could just look at this and do half of it. Yeah, x to the 3rd power. You could write it as x to the 3rd squared and then do that where you cancel the square and square root. Any way you do it, your answer should come out just x to the 3rd. So if you have a positive, or even, if you have an even square root, just take half of it and it'll be simplified. If you have one that's an odd number, like x to the 9th, that would be
X squared.
x to the 8th times x, square root of x, right? Square x to the 8th and x gives you x to the 9th. This one, take half of that and it will come out of your square root sign. This part right here will be x to the 4th power. This part has to stay under the square root. Okay? That's as far as you can simplify that one. Okay, if you have a number like square root of 3 times square root of 33. Remember, if you have a square root times itself, then you could just take it out. Like if we could break this down into square root of 3 times square root of 11. And we have this square root of 3 here. This part right here can be simplified.
To what?
Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, which is
Oh,
3.
sorry.
Or just look at it and say times itself is just the 3. So that would be square root of 9 times 11, or you could just say 3 times square root of 11.
Aye.
Okay, now we get to get something darker.